I was watching Cartoon Network at night, which was King of the Hill. I couldn't get any sleep. I was surfing through the guide, and a regular show showed up at 3 in the morning. I was confused. They wouldn't air it in the middle of the night. So a commercial came on, and it was announcing a regular show episode about to come on. King of the Hill was going off, and it now says, now for our special episode. The opening had a very poor sound quality, and the title card said, Mordecai's Killer Side, or something like that. Usually whenever him and Rigby are with Margaret, Mordecai gets really serious around her, and he doesn't like it when Rigby makes jokes about her. So I opened up at the coffee shop. The duo were sitting down watching some horror movie on TV, waiting for their coffee to be served. Rigby faces Mordecai and asks, so, are y'all going to make out? The Blue Jay was getting more irritated by this, and so he picks up Rigby and threw him across the room. The raccoon hits the wall and broke his back. God damn it, you broke my back, you son of a bitch! I cringed at that scene because they usually don't swear in that show. Rigby wanders off crying, which left Mordecai there. Margaret walks up with 2 cups of coffee and asks, what's wrong with him? He's a crybaby sometimes, Mordecai replied. So Mordecai drank both cups of coffee and wanders off into the night. The next morning rose, and all the characters were their normal selves. Benson was giving out orders. Mordecai and Rigby, y'all be hammering the tents up for a special guests. Like usual, Mordecai and Rigby let out a moan. Why do we always have to do this boring stuff? Mordecai asked. Well, that will get you to work instead of playing video games and slacking off. So if I come back and didn't see the tent set up, you'll be fired. So they went off to work on the tent. Mordecai grabs a sledgehammer and stakes while Rigby was setting up the tent. Want to drive around? Mordecai asked Rigby. Yeah, this sucks. So they got in their golf cart and drove around instead of doing their work. Benson walks out of the house with the clipboard. He saw Mordecai and Rigby slacking off. The gumballs in his head turn red like usual whenever he gets angry. Mordecai, Rigby! They stopped when they heard Benson. Damn it, you two, every time this shit happens, you're always screwing around, and now you're fired! That word echoed in Mordecai's ears, and he stood there slowly and turned around and walked toward the tools. Mordecai, what are you doing? Rigby asked with concern. The Blue Jay speaks with a serious tone, like he was ready to hurt someone. It's something I've been waiting to do. He picks up the hammer and walks towards the gumball machine and stood in front of him to look taller and more intimidating. Say that word again, Mordecai said. You're fired, Benson responded. This is where it gets disturbing. He swings the hammer at Benson's face, causing him to lose balance, and it shows Benson's view, which was blurry and seeing double visions of Mordecai. All the characters stopped what they were doing and watched in horror as Benson was lying on the ground, covering his face. As he removes his hands from his face, a big crack on his glass face was showing. Mordecai grabs him by the neck and pins him into the grass and began smashing him with the hammer. The glass shatters into a million pieces, and all that remains spilled out. What was even worse was the gumballs were replaced with blood, real blood. Mordecai, what have you done? Rigby screamed in fear. The Blue Jay throws the hammer into the bushes, and he walks into the garage and finds a machete that was in a sheath and takes it out of it. Rigby curls up into a ball in fear as he sees Mordecai approaching him in a far distance holding a machete. Mordecai, I'm sorry about what I said about Margaret. Please don't hurt me. Rigby began crying as Mordecai was giving an evil grin, and he slowly lifts him off the ground and whispers in his ear, You are not forgiven. With that, he thrusts the blade in his back as he screams in pain. Blood was pouring out of the wound while the Blue Jay reached his hand inside the wound and rips out his lungs. The raccoon was dead. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I wanted to shut off the TV, but I was too afraid to turn it off, so I had to endure watching it. It shows Mordecai holding the lungs as he crushes them in his bare hands. Pops, Muscle Man, and that white Yeti thing went in the house, locked the doors, and grabbed their weapons. Pops began crying. What has Mordecai done? Muscle Man was holding a shotgun and went out and saw nothing. It was midnight, black outside, and a little windy. The Blue Jay appeared behind him with an axe, and right as Muscle Man turned around, he swung it at his head and whacked right off. It shows his head flying and bouncing into the unknown. The bird turns around with bloodshot eyes and chops the door down. Pops began to hyperventilate in extreme fear and shock as he heard footsteps getting louder. He swings the axe at the door and hacks it down with one hit. I thought to myself, wow, this bird must be really strong. Mordecai was standing up with his legs spread slightly to show dominance as Pops was crying. Mordecai, what's going on? Tell me what's wrong. He drops the bloody axe and walks over to Pops and grabs him by the neck as he was screaming and kicking to break away from his grip. The Blue Jay walks downstairs with Pops in his hands, and he finds a sawmill, and this part haunts me forever. He turns it on and dunks Pop's face into the blade as blood smears all over the walls. Seriously, would JG ever make this stuff? Mordecai lets out a deep, evil chuckle as he wrote his name in Pop's blood. I remember seeing Pop's face all sawed in half and bloodied. It shows Skips and the Yeti hanging in a tree. Maybe he killed himself so he wouldn't die in a brutal way? Then Mordecai slowly walks off into the distance while the song Fate by Scranton Sirens was playing in the background and the credits show up. I was motionless after I just witnessed that. I began to cry in fear and sadness from the traumatizing episode I saw of my most beloved show ever.